Holy shit, my turret is ticking for over 1 million. Damn. Yo, guys, what is up? Max in our first Descendant video, and today we're going over my updated guide to Jayber. Didn't think I'd be making this video. Jayber has been historically one of the worst Descendants, if not the, certified worst Descendant in TFD for probably over a year now. However, in the most recent, season launch for Season 3, they massively buffed him by upping his damage by over 3 times his original values, giving him extra turrets, reworking a whole lot of his kit, giving him a bunch of quality of life, and he's actually very good now. He's putting up some of the fastest kill times for Stormhanger. I personally would probably put him in A tier, which hurts to say. He's actually very, very good. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down my updated guides for bossing, as well as void erosion and just general mobbing. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So to start, they kind of changed Jayber's kit. So now he used to have a Transcendent module to get 2 assault turrets. Now by default, he just has 3. So he no longer needs to use that Transcendent module, which opens up a slot. And he gets an additional turret, which is significant more damage, not only just for the turret's damage, but also his 4th ability detonates the turret. So if there's more turrets to detonate, it does more damage. Also, whenever you remove a turret, it now does a AoE explosion. So you can more frequently spam his turrets. You're actually paid out for destroying them by replacing a new one. They also buffed the assault turrets recovery and damage reduction. Doesn't really matter for us. They gave us 25% movement speed with overhaul, which is very nice. It allows Jayber to keep up a little bit more with other Descendants, makes his playstyle a little bit less awkward. They also massively buffed the damage of the assault turrets by a 2.6 multiplier, which is very, very nice, as well as buffing up the turret continuous damage. So they kind of got a 2-pronged buff. His old Transcendent modules, Attacking Compulsion and Medical Compulsion, which allowed you to double up on turrets, have been removed, and they said that they're going to be adding new modules in the future. So hopefully this is the weakest that new Jayber is going to be, because he's going to get new Transcendent modules in the future to make him even stronger. But there's really not many options for Transcendent modules to use on him right now. So let's start by talking about his mobbing and void erosion build, and then we'll get into bossing. The mobbing and void erosion builds are very similar, so that's why we're going to do those two first. But on this build, Jayber has 5% skill critical hit rate, so skill critical hit, anything, is basically out the window, and we can get a F-ton of cooldown on him. Basically, the way that one thing that we're kind of focusing on when we're building Jayber is he's got a lot of freedom for tons of damage increases, and we kind of want to balance both the specific non-attribute skill power that we're getting and the normal skill power for a good damage formula. We don't want too much on one side, and the mage set is going to be giving us a bunch of non-attribute skill power. The Peacemaker is going to be giving us a bunch of non-attribute skill power. Non-attribute amplification is giving us a bunch of non-attribute skill power. So it's pretty mandatory, in my opinion, to use power increase. We really, really need non-specific skill power, and we're going to take the hit to cooldown. But because we're taking a small hit to cooldown, we're going to be using multi-talented, which is basically cooldown capping us. And so we are going to be able to use all of his skills very often. You're just basically, with mobbing, you're just putting down his turrets wherever you go. You can spam them, and then you can also constantly detonate them with Purge Code and replace them. Purge Code does a explosion damage, which is quite nice. But for mobbing, what's really, really great is these lightning AoEs that persist. If you're doing anything in Axion Plains, for example, First Crater, where enemies are constantly spawning from those spawners, getting these lightning AoEs down are just a huge damage increase. And so that is kind of what we're using Purge Code for. They do the explosions, but they're also going to give you a second AoE dot. One thing that's making Jayber do so much damage right now is he's got so many damage instances. You've got the assault turrets doing damage, plus the turret zones continuously doing damage. Plus, you've got the Purge Code, which does explosion damage, and it also leaves lingering AoEs. So, you just putting your turrets down already with a lightning thing, you've got like 3 instances of tick damage happening, which is really, really potent. Now, for the rest of the build, we're going to be using double cooldown, HP, multi-talented. As I said, he's got a bunch of like dimension abilities, so multi-talent gives us more cooldown. Max expandable range is 200%, so we don't need any more than skill expansion, plus our Arche tuning board, and then focus on dimension for some extra cooldown so that we can spam more often. Now, I have this slot in the middle open because you can put a lot of things in here. There's a lot of options. You could go for example, a spear and shield to get a little bit extra damage out of the turrets. The turrets scale off of your HP, so you could go for another HP module so that they don't die as often. You could go for like an MP or a conservation. The turrets don't work with MP collector. The turrets, like the kills that they do, don't count for MP collector, so that's not a great choice. Basically, you've got a lot of different options. I ended up putting a skill extension here. Basically, just for quality of life, it's going to give us longer ticks on the lightning AoE. These do multi-overlap, so it gives you a bigger window to overlap them if you need some big damage. Plus, if you leave a turret out for whatever reason, like it'll just stay up longer. You've got more hit increase, so if you shoot a turret, it lasts longer. Just a quality of life. You could squeeze out like technically a little bit more damage, but for mobbing, I think that's fine. So this is our like mobbing build, and then we're gonna be using power beyond, which gives us that skill power increase, which we talked about we really need. But also it procs off of global dots. His 1 is a global dot, so the 1 is going to constantly be pulling enemies into its turret zone from outside of its turret zone, which is also really nice. It just makes his mobbing very, very efficient. Now for Void Erosion, you're kind of constantly on the move, and enemies are a little bit more like scattered. I guess it kind of depends on the layout, but I was testing purge code versus not purge code in Void Erosion, and I was getting consistently faster times without purge code. And the reason for that is, 1, enemies need to be like right on top of this and have like triple overlapping turrets for this to do good damage, because it fires directly in the zone of the turret. So if you've got an elite and there's a turret here, and turret here, potentially only one of those zones are going to hit, and you deleted all your turrets. It actually, like, sometimes it was damage loss to activate R4. It was still very good on the final boss, but for everything leading up to that, it felt pretty bad. The really nice thing, just look at this damage, by the way. The burst damage is we'd get 1 hit of 5,762 modifier. If we take that off, we get 3 shots of 4,000. So it actually nets out to more damage not using purge code. It's more burst damage. It kills things faster. So Void Erosion, that's perfect for that. And it shoots outside of the range that, like, the turret's lightning AoE could hit. So if your turrets are not exactly overlapping, they'll still go and hit elites with all of these shots that they shoot out. So you don't have to like perfectly position all of your turrets every time just to kill an elite. As soon as there's like an elite left or something, because usually there's elite stragglers, you just blow up your turrets, they'll kill the elite, and then you move on to the next room. You can like start running after you click this button, basically already to the next room. But that is really nice. I do want to note, for mobbing, you really like never ever use your 3. The reason for that is because your 4 grants you overhaul. While you have overhaul active, anytime that you put down a turret, it's going to spawn with this AoE turret zone, and you could technically use your 3 to reproc those turrets. But on this build, you've got so much cooldown that you're most likely replacing them. And remember that we now have a benefit to replacing them, which is the explosion. So you're not really using your 3 all that much. You just want to make sure that you're looping your overhaul, which is really, really easy to do, because once again, we've got a bunch of cooldown. So I personally, not going to be using the purge code for Void Erosion. And then we don't really need duration, because once again, we're constantly moving those turrets. We're not using the 3, so like duration really doesn't do anything. So I slapped in energy collection. Energy collection gives us more MP recovery without having to use like maximize conservation, which could sacrifice our modifier, and modifier is very, very important for Jayber's turrets. It's a big damage increase. So energy collection solves any energy issues without having to like lose any damage for it. So that is the Void Erosion build. For the Arche tuning board, we're going to grab some MP recovery, some HP, make sure we get our skill power, cooldown, and then we're going to be using final preparations here. When attacking enemies with your 4 skill, you grant final preparations, which gives us extra range. The range doesn't do anything, but it does give us skill power. The reason we're not using non-attribute cohesion here is because the turret kills do not proc non-attribute cohesion. There's an issue with like turrets counting kills. It's the reason why like MP collector doesn't work on them. Non-attribute cohesion won't work on them. So we're kind of forced into using this mod. Still a good mod, but non-attribute cohesion would technically be better. But that is the Arche tuning board. For reactor and components, you're going to want to use a reactor with a hand cannon mounting with skill cooldown and non-attribute skill boost ratio. You can also just use non-attribute dimension boost ratio. The non-attribute is going to buff up our 4 as well, which is nice because our 4 does a decent chunk of damage versus dimension would only buff the turrets. So I think it's a little bit more useful to go skill cooldown non-attribute here. And then we're going to be using the mage set for its stacking bonus. One thing to note about the stacking bonus on mage is your turrets snapshot it. So if you're going against like the Void Erosion boss or a boss at the end, you want to make sure that you cast all of your turrets, or you can leave your turrets up when you proc them with this mage set. Even if you lose the mage buff or you lose your peacemaker buff, your whatever damage you cast the turrets with, they will persist as long as you keep them up. So that is just very nice. So we can kind of snapshot this mage set bonus for a bunch of extra damage. Next, we get to the bossing build, which I still have a little bit more catalyzing to do, but I kind of want to break down this because it's very, very weird, but it works very, very well. I don't think I would have come to this conclusion on this build without a ton of help from chat. I was speccing into tons of cooldown and keeping up the turrets and spamming the 4 and constantly redeploying turrets for like Stormhanger. However, the best way to build Jayber for Stormhanger to kill Stormhanger very efficiently, because we have a bunch of buffs that are all kind of rotating in and out. For example, the Peacemaker buff is a ton of damage, but if we ever hit our 3, we lose it. The Enlightened Mage set is a ton of damage increase, but we can lose it if we're casting turrets without it. Basically, when you're going for a cooldown build, I was getting, like, my shortest time was about 3 minutes to kill Stormhanger, and the new strategy that was basically taught to me by chat is just use the turrets, put them down, and keep them alive, and you snapshot them at the peak of your buffs. And that knocked my time down to like a minute and some seconds. So because we're just going to keep the turrets alive, we can actually use some wacky things like maximize skill and maximize power to give the turrets a ton of extra damage. The turrets are ticking Stormhanger for like 1 million damage a tick, which is ridiculous. And we're also going to be using something called Preemptive Strike. I actually messed around with this on Nell for Stormhanger because it was pretty strong against Nell, or against Stormhanger with Nell. Unfortunately, this doesn't work for the second part of the fight, but I originally assumed that this was just damage against the first instance of damage on the boss. However, this is damage or extra damage until the boss's shield goes down. So for the first basically half of the fight, all of the damage that you're doing is getting a 17% multiplier. You're dealing 17% of your damage dealt as additional damage, which is a massive damage increase. Unfortunately, it doesn't work later on, but things like Dangerous Ambush don't seem to work very well against this boss because for some reason the damage that you're doing with the turrets doesn't really seem to down the boss all that much, and Dangerous Ambush would only work if you cast the turrets during the buff. They won't retroactively get Dangerous Ambush buff, so you would need to like recast them, and that just doesn't work with the strategy. So the really only thing that we can use here is Preemptive Strike because it doesn't care about like snapshotting tech. So this is going to give us a bunch of extra damage, and then we basically are just trying to squeeze out as much damage as possible and give the turrets a little bit more survivability. So this should be catalyzed and full, but Stim Accelerant is going to give us more HP. Our turrets are on a 37-second cooldown, so you cannot let the turrets die. If the turrets die, your run is kind of over. And so you'd want Stim Accelerant fully leveled up. You'd want Spear and Shield to give them extra defense fully leveled up. And then we're also using a non-attribute Succinctium to give them even more damage. Basically, we're just foregoing any sort of cooldown so that we can put in as much damage as possible. We're also going to put Dimension Amplification and non-attribute Amplification for even more damage. And then we just put the turrets down at the height of their buff and let them do their thing. But that is the build. We're also still going to be rocking Beyond Power for that as well. For the reactor, I didn't have a perfect one. Mine was additional skill attack when attacking a Colossus with non-attribute skill power boost ratio. With a hand cannon mount, I didn't fully rank this thing up. This should, in a perfect world, if you want to get the fastest kill, be additional skill attack when attacking Colossus plus Dimension skill power boost ratio. As we're not doing basically any damage with our fourth ability. The entirety of the fight is from Dimension damage, and so a Dimension-specific boost will actually get you a little bit further. We're also going to be using the Mage set here. For the boss arcade tuning, we can forgo cooldown. We're still getting final preparations. We make sure that we get the additional damage when attacking Colossus. And then I just picked up a little bit of extra duration for some extra quality of life and grabbed all the little baby skill nodes. I was thinking that we could go down and pick up this mutant cell slot for Cerulean, but the only real there really wasn't like many buffs that we could actually benefit from this mutant cell, so I opted for not going that route. But yeah, basically we just picking up as much little tiny like damage things as we can get with final preparations and some extra HP. If you wanted to make them even tankier, you could spend some more points and like go down to some of this defense and HP. But I was having a decent time having them survive with this setup. The last thing to mention is the gun that I'm using. Basically, only use the Peacemaker. Peacemaker does a fair bit of damage if you need it. But the real thing is that the 3 scales with mag size. So if I have 22 bullets in my Peacemaker, I get 22 bullets in my 3. And so you want just mag size mods. Throw on Expand Weapon Charge and Compulsive Magazine, and you're pretty much good to go. I had some like extra things here just from my old build for some extra damage. But the 2 most important things for Jayber are just that you throw 2 mag size mods on. You can technically throw a fire rate, but it's not overly important. For his inversion reinforcements, I was rocking MP recovery, skill cost reduction, and also toxic focus rounds, so that when we shoot an enemy, we could strip their resistances. Area burst inducer gives us extra incoming damage on enemies. Self-recovery gives us some healing. Quantum domain for the extra range and skill power. So to do a little demonstration on Stormhanger, our goal is to press our 3rd ability twice before the fight starts. That doesn't go on cooldown unless we shoot it. So just proc it and then proc it twice. We're trying to get all of our buffs ready, basically. So that's procced. Now we go with the medical turrets. Then we're going to proc our 4th ability. We just want to make sure that the 4 hits him. And then we could put these down. There's the turrets. I think I got them all off. Shoot him a little bit. Ow. And now we're just going to try to keep our turrets alive, which is sometimes easier said than done. If he puts like dots on them, it's really hard to keep them alive. And placing them all together helps you keep them going without wasting a bunch of ammo. Oop. They're getting a bit low. Make sure they're nice and healed. And yeah, we just keep them going, and that's pretty much the kill. Cool. Just keep the turrets healthy. Guys, that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.